The rain fell like shards of silver across the dark city. Sirens wailed in the distance, but no one dared come near the old dockyard. Flames climbed the wooden walls, devouring everything in their path. The air burned with smoke and screams, until only one remained. A small boy's cry. Through the chaos, Leon Vetra moved like a shadow, tall, sharp-eyed, dressed in black. He was known across the city as the Alpha King, the cold, untouchable ruler of the Mafia underworld. Yet, at that moment, he wasn't a monster. He was a man chasing a heartbeat. "Is anyone there?" His voice was low, rough, the kind that could command a room or crush it into silence. Then he saw him. A boy, maybe 15, maybe younger, curled behind a pile of crates, trembling, covered in soot. His clothes were torn, his skin blistered by smoke. But what caught Leon's breath wasn't the fear in the boy's eyes. It was his scent. Warm honey and rain, soft, pure, omega. "Hey!" Leon said, kneeling beside him. "You're safe now." The boy lifted his gaze. Eyes gray as storm clouds, wide with disbelief. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, coughing. "They'll kill you too." Leon didn't answer. He tore off his coat and wrapped it around the boy. Flames crackled behind them, but Leon didn't flinch. He carried the boy in his arms, his muscles straining under the weight, yet his grip was gentle, protective. Outside, the rain poured harder, extinguishing bits of fire that licked at the ground. Leon laid the boy on the wet pavement, brushing hair from his forehead. "What's your name?" Leon asked. The boy hesitated. "It's Evan." Leon's jaw tightened as thunder roared overhead. "Evan," he repeated softly, like he was memorizing the name. "You're going to live. Do you hear me?" Evan blinked through tears, nodding weakly. Why did you help me?" Leon looked away, toward the burning warehouse where screams still echoed. "Because no one helped me when I needed it." The sound of approaching sirens cut through the rain. Leon turned, eyes narrowing. He couldn't be seen here, not the Mafia Alpha, not with an Omega in his arms. He placed a small silver pendant in Evan's hand, a wolf-shaped charm engraved with an old family crest. "If you ever need me," Leon said, voice low and final, "follow the wolf." Then, before Evan could speak, Leon disappeared into the night, swallowed by shadows, leaving only the pendant behind. Years passed. The fire became a distant nightmare, a half-remembered dream. But for both of them, the Alpha and the Omega, that night never truly ended. The red moon that hung above the burning sky had bound their souls in silence. Evan grew up carrying the wolf pendant close to his heart. He told himself it was just a reminder of survival. But sometimes, in his sleep, he'd see sharp blue eyes staring through smoke, and a deep voice whispering, "You're safe now." The morning light spilled across the city like melted gold, touching the glass towers and waking up the streets below. Inside a small studio apartment, Evan Hale sat by his drafting table, pencil in hand, eyes heavy with exhaustion. His life had become a rhythm of designs, deadlines, and coffee. He was one of the best young interior designers in the city, but no one knew how much it cost him to get there. He didn't believe in fairy tales anymore. Not after the fire. Not after he lost everything. Still, sometimes, when the night was quiet, he'd catch himself tracing the silver wolf pendant that hung from his neck. The only thing he had left from that night. A reminder of a man who existed like a dream. A savior who vanished before dawn. The phone buzzed. Evan rubbed his tired eyes and picked up. "Mr. Hale?" a woman's voice asked. "This is from Vetra Holdings. You've been selected for an exclusive design project. 6 months contract. Full payment in advance." Evan blinked. "Vetra Holdings?" "Yes, the client prefers privacy. You'll receive the address and legal contract shortly." He didn't think much of it. Big names hired anonymously all the time. 6 months of work meant stability, and a chance to finally pay off his debts. He signed the contract that evening. Somewhere, far above the city lights, Leon stood again under another red moon. He held a glass of whiskey, but his mind drifted to a memory. a boy with storm-gray eyes and a scent he could never forget. He had killed kings, betrayed friends, conquered empires, yet he couldn't forget the trembling Omega he'd saved long ago. And he didn't know that fate was bringing him back. The red moon rose again, and destiny began to stir. Days later, a black car arrived to take him to the site. As they drove past the edge of the city, Evan watched the skyline fade into mist and luxury estates. The mansion appeared like something out of a myth. Carved stone, dark glass, and walls that whispered power. The kind of place owned by someone untouchable. When the gates opened, a cold shiver ran down his spine. Something in the air felt familiar. The scent of rain on iron, the heavy silence, the aura of control. Inside, the butler led him down a marble hallway lined with ancient paintings and faint traces of cigar smoke. Evan tried to focus on the details, the architecture, the angles, the light, but his heartbeat refused to calm. And then, a voice echoed from behind. "You're early." That voice, deep, calm, commanding. Every cell in Evan's body froze. He turned slowly. Standing at the top of the stairs was Leon Vetra. Taller now, sharper, his presence filling the room like stormlight. His eyes were still that cold shade of blue that once looked at him through fire and smoke. Evan's fingers tightened around the folder in his hand. For a second, he couldn't breathe. Leon descended the stairs with measured steps, his gaze never leaving Evan's face. "You're the designer?" Leon asked, tone unreadable. Evan swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak. "Yes, Mr. Vetra. I wasn't informed who the client was." Leon's lips curved, not quite a smile. "Privacy matters in my world." Their eyes met, and time folded in on itself. Evan's pulse thundered in his ears. Leon could smell it, the faint, trembling scent of Omega fear. And yet, beneath it, something else, recognition. The mansion was too quiet. Every sound, a clock ticking, footsteps echoing down the marble hall, seemed to chase Evan wherever he went. He told himself to focus. He had a job to do, a professional contract. 6 months, good pay, no personal attachments. But the problem was Leon Vetra. The man was everywhere. In every shadow, every silence, every glance that lingered too long. Evan spread blueprints across the long table in the library, trying to drown himself in work. The scent of leather, ink, and old books wrapped around him. Sunlight spilled through tall windows, painting soft gold on his sketches. Then came that voice again, smooth, deep, with the kind of control that could silence a room. "You're working too hard." Evan stiffened. He didn't have to look up. He already knew that voice better than his own heartbeat. Leon stood at the other end of the table, hands tucked in his pockets, a faint smirk curling on his lips. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing veins and strength that spoke of years in command and battle. "I don't like unfinished things," Evan replied, eyes fixed on his plans. "You hired me to design, not to rest." Leon chuckled softly, but there was no amusement in it. "Still stubborn." Evan froze. Still. That single word carried weight, like Leon remembered him. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them thickened. Not hostile, not safe. Something in between. Leon walked around the table, stopping beside him. He leaned in slightly, scanning the sketches. His scent, smoke, rain, and faint spice, surrounded Evan, pulling him back to another night, another life. He remembered that same scent mixed with fire and ash. The red moon, the hand that carried him through the flames. Evan's hand trembled as he adjusted his pencil. "You're standing too close, Mr. Vetra." Leon's voice dropped, softer this time. "Does it bother you?" Evan looked up. Their eyes met, gray to blue, and suddenly the world went still. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. An invisible string pulled tight between them. "Yes," Evan whispered. "It does." Leon's gaze flickered. A flash of something almost human beneath his cold exterior. Guilt, memory, regret. Then, as quickly as it came, it vanished. He straightened, sliding his hands back into his pockets. "Good. Keep your guard up." Not everyone under this roof deserves your trust. That night, Evan stayed late in the mansion, reviewing textures and fabrics. Through the glass walls, lightning flickered in the distance. He thought he was alone, until he heard faint voices near the hall. 2 guards, whispering. "Boss told us to keep an eye on the designer. Says no one touches him. Not even a word." Evan's heart skipped. Leon was protecting him. Quietly, without reason, he pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the rapid beat beneath his palm. Why was the Alpha protecting him like that? Why did he look at him as if he carried his past? Later, Leon stood on the balcony above, watching the rain return. He'd told himself to stay away, to forget the boy from the fire. But every time Evan spoke, every time he frowned in concentration, the memory burned back alive. He'd known thousands of faces, but only one had ever looked at him without fear. Only one had called him human. He closed his eyes, gripping the glass rail. He couldn't afford weakness, not in his world. And yet, every time he saw Evan smile, the mask he wore began to crack. Downstairs, Evan opened his sketchbook to a fresh page. He began to draw, but instead of furniture or walls, his pencil traced the outline of a man's face. Sharp eyes, a scar along the jaw, a face he thought he'd forgotten. When he realized who it was, his chest tightened. He closed the book, shut off the light, and whispered to himself, "It can't be him, right?" But the storm outside answered for him, thunder rolling like the echo of a secret waiting to resurface. The mansion slept under a silver moon. Outside, the world was calm, but inside, Evan Hale couldn't rest. He lay awake in the quiet guest room, sheets tangled, eyes open to the darkness. Sleep was impossible. Dreams for him were never safe. They dragged him back to the night everything broke. The fire, the betrayal, the voice of someone he once loved whispering promises that turned to chains. He remembered being sold, traded like something less than human, by the very man who once swore to protect him. The memories clawed at his chest. He pressed a hand over his heart and forced his breath to steady. "You survived, Evan. You don't need anyone now." That was the wall he built, thick, cold, and unshakable. Morning came softly, filtered sunlight brushing across the marble floors. Evan buried his past behind professionalism. He moved through the mansion's halls with quiet grace, clipboard in hand, every word precise, every smile perfectly rehearsed. No one could guess the chaos beneath, except for Leon. The Alpha noticed everything. The way Evan flinched at sudden sounds, the way his gaze hardened whenever someone touched his arm, the faint scent of fear that surfaced when the guards passed too close. He didn't ask, he didn't pry, but his jaw would tighten, his eyes would darken, and the temperature in the room would shift whenever someone's presence made Evan uneasy. Downstairs, Evan closed his sketchbook, unaware of the vow spoken above him. He looked out at the rain streaking across the glass. The mansion felt both safe and dangerous, a prison wrapped in luxury. And deep down, he wondered, why does this Alpha make me feel like I'm both protected and trapped? He touched the wolf pendant again, closing his eyes. He didn't know it yet, but the same man who once carried him from the flames was now standing guard against the world that once tried to destroy him. And this time, fate wasn't going to tear them apart so easily. The rain had a strange way of whispering to him. Each drop that hit the window of his room sounded like a voice from long ago, faint, broken, and begging to be heard. Evan sat by the window, sketchbook open, pencil resting on the page, but his hand wouldn't move. The page stared back at him like an accusation. The mansion around him was silent, but his thoughts were not. Every corner, every flicker of the fireplace seemed to pull him back to the night he swore he would never remember again. He closed his eyes. The sound of thunder echoed in his chest, and the world around him blurred into a memory. It had been 3 years ago on a night just like this. The city was quiet, hidden under the mist of midnight rain. He remembered standing beside Rylan, his lover then, the one who used to brush his hair from his eyes and promise him a better life. "Just trust me," Rylan had said that night, holding his hand tightly. After tonight, we'll never have to worry again. Evan believed him. He always did. He had dressed in his best clothes, a simple white shirt and the nervous hope of someone who wanted to be loved. But when the car stopped, and the door opened to reveal a dark, empty warehouse, something inside him began to tremble. The smell was the first thing that hit him. Oil, rust, and something faintly metallic. He turned to Rylan, confused. "Rylan, where are we?" he had asked softly. Rylan didn't meet his eyes. He only stepped back, voice low, uncertain. "Just stand still, Evan. It'll be over soon." Then came the men. Strangers with cold smiles and greedy eyes. They looked at him the way predators look at prey. He didn't understand, not until Rylan spoke again. And when he did, the words shattered everything. "I'm sorry, Evan, you're special. They'll pay a lot for you." At first, Evan laughed. A broken, disbelieving sound. But when one of the men grabbed his arm, the truth struck him harder than the blow that followed. The person he loved had sold him. He screamed, kicked, begged. But his voice was drowned by laughter and the clinking of coins. Rylan couldn't even look at him. He turned away, shame and greed fighting behind his eyes. Then came the fire, an explosion from nowhere. Glass breaking, men shouting, flames spreading across the walls like a living monster. And through the chaos, a shadow appeared. A man in black, tall, silent, eyes burning gold in the flicker of firelight. He moved through the room like death itself, swift, merciless. Gunshots, cries, then silence. And when it was all over, he was the only one standing. Evan remembered falling to his knees, coughing, shaking. He looked up, and those same golden eyes met his. They weren't cruel. They were calm, cold. And yet, there was something else beneath them. Something that felt terrifyingly familiar. He never asked his name. He didn't need to. The man lifted him up and carried him through the fire without a single word. When Evan woke again, he was safe. But the world he knew was gone. Rylan was gone. And the boy who once believed in love was gone too. The sound of thunder pulled him back to the present. Evan opened his eyes, heart pounding. He was in the mansion again, the same mansion that belonged to him. Leon Vetra, the man from the fire, the man whose voice haunted his dreams. He pushed his hair back and looked at himself in the mirror. His reflection was pale, fragile. And there, just below his neck, a faint scar. Almost invisible, but not to him. He touched it gently. It burned under his fingers. A mark. An unfinished mark. An Alpha's mark. His breath caught. The memory of that night pressed against his skin like a secret trying to escape. Had it been Leon? Was he the one who? Before he could finish the thought, the door creaked. Evan turned sharply, and there he was. Leon stood at the doorway, dark eyes unreadable under the dim light. His presence filled the room effortlessly, as if even the shadows obeyed him. "You shouldn't be awake," Leon said quietly, voice deep, calm, dangerous. Evan's throat tightened. "I couldn't sleep. Nightmares?" Evan hesitated, then nodded. "Sometimes, they don't really end." Leon stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Some nightmares are meant to be remembered." The air between them shifted, heavy, electric. Evan could feel his heart hammering in his chest. He wanted to ask. He wanted to scream. "Were you there? That night?" But he couldn't. Leon's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. He turned away, voice low. "Go to sleep, Evan. The past can't hurt you here." Evan swallowed the truth that burned on his tongue. As the door closed softly behind Leon, he looked once more into the mirror. The scar on his neck glowed faintly under the moonlight. He whispered to himself, voice trembling. "Then why does it still burn? When you're near me?" The rain answered with silence. Outside, thunder rolled again, soft, distant, like a warning from fate that the past was not done with him yet. The morning light crept through the tall curtains of the Vetra mansion, brushing against the walls like soft gold dust. But for Evan, it felt like the kind of morning that carried too much silence. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw fire, and a pair of golden eyes that refused to fade. By the time he stepped out of his room, the house was already awake. The sound of men speaking quietly in the hall, the faint scent of coffee, the distant hum of power that always lingered around Leon's world. Evan walked toward the grand staircase, clutching his sketchbook to his chest. He was supposed to meet Leon today, to discuss the design plans for the mansion's renovation. A simple, professional meeting. At least that's what he told himself. But the moment he entered Leon's study, the air changed. Leon was standing near the window, shirt sleeves rolled up, morning light glinting off the scar on his forearm. A mark of violence, power, and survival. He turned slowly when he heard Evan's footsteps. For a heartbeat, the Alpha's expression softened. Then, as always, he hid it behind that quiet, unreadable calm. "Morning," Leon said, voice low. "You're early." Evan nodded, setting down his papers. "Couldn't sleep." Leon studied him, not like an employer looking at an employee, but like a man memorizing something he had once lost. Evan avoided his gaze and spread the design sheets across the table. "These are the color concepts for the West Wing," he said quickly. "You mentioned wanting to keep the marble but add contrast." "I was thinking." His voice faltered. Leon had stepped closer. Too close. Evan could feel the weight of his presence behind him, the heat that rolled off his skin even from inches away. His pulse quickened. His fingers froze over the papers. "Keep talking," Leon murmured, but Evan couldn't. He could barely breathe. A sudden, sharp pain tingled along his neck, right where the faint scar had always been. He gasped quietly and instinctively lifted his hand to touch it. Leon's eyes followed the movement, and when his gaze fell upon the scar, something inside him changed. The calm in his face fractured, replaced by shock first, then realization, and finally, a storm of emotion that even he couldn't hide. He reached out, almost unconsciously, his fingers brushing the side of Evan's neck. Evan stiffened, breath catching. "Where did you get this?" Leon asked, his voice rougher than usual. Evan's heart raced. It's nothing. Just an old burn, I think." Leon's jaw tightened. "That's not a burn." Evan turned away, flustered. "It doesn't matter. It's old." But Leon didn't step back. His voice dropped lower. "It's mine." The words hit Evan like lightning. He froze, eyes wide, unable to speak. Leon's hand trembled slightly as he lowered it. He took a deep breath, struggling to contain the instinct clawing at his control, the instinct of an alpha recognizing his mark. "I marked you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "That night, in the fire, before I carried you out." Evan's throat went dry. "No. You're mistaken." Leon's eyes darkened, glowing faintly gold. "I never forget my mark." The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous, electric. Evan backed away, his heartbeat too loud in his chest. "You're saying I'm my Omega," Leon finished, voice steady now. "You always were." Evan shook his head, anger and fear swirling inside him. "No. That's impossible. You didn't even know me." Leon took a slow step forward. "I knew your scent before I saw your face. I knew the fear in your heartbeat when you screamed. I knew the moment I touched you. The bond was there." Evan's vision blurred. His body ached with memories. The fire, the pain, the strange calm that had fallen over him when Leon's arms carried him away. Couldn't be true. He didn't want it to be true. "Why didn't you say anything?" Evan demanded, voice trembling. "You knew all this time?" Leon's expression softened, guilt flickering behind his eyes. "You were terrified. You'd just been betrayed, used. You didn't need another alpha claiming you. You needed to survive." He paused, his voice breaking slightly. "So I let you go." The truth hit harder than any confession. Evan stared at him, the pain in his chest deep and unfamiliar. "You saved me, and then disappeared," he whispered. "Why come back now?" Leon's gaze met his, fierce, raw, unguarded. "I didn't come back," he said softly. "You did." The silence stretched between them again, the kind that felt like gravity, pulling them toward something neither of them could stop. Evan turned away, trying to steady his breath, but the faint heat pulsing under his scar betrayed him. His mark had awakened. He could feel Leon's presence like a flame brushing against his skin, dangerous yet impossibly safe. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, and when Leon finally stepped back, it felt like the world exhaled with him. "Forget it," Leon said quietly, though his voice trembled with restraint. "It doesn't change anything." But Evan heard the lie in his tone, because something had changed. The past was no longer memory. It was alive, breathing through every heartbeat they shared, every look they couldn't hold for too long. And deep down, both of them knew the mark had never faded. It had only been waiting for the right moment, the right touch to remember what it once belonged to. The night air was heavy with rain again, that same familiar sound that followed Evan everywhere, like an echo from the past. Thunder rolled across the city skyline, rattling the tall windows of the Vetra mansion. Evan sat in the grand hall, trying to focus on his design sketches, but his mind wouldn't stop spinning. Leon's words from earlier still clung to his thoughts. "It's mine." The mark, the truth, the heat that had flared beneath his skin when Leon touched him. None of it would leave him alone. He pressed his palms against his eyes. "It doesn't mean anything," he whispered to himself. "It's over. It has to be." But deep down, something in him was stirring, something ancient, instinctive, uncontrollable. Leon was in his study, watching the rain blur the city lights outside. He hadn't felt like this in years. Restless, alert, unable to stay still. The moment he'd seen the mark, every barrier he'd built around himself began to crack. He had spent years denying what the bond demanded, pretending he was nothing more than a man of power, not a creature of instinct and longing. But now that Evan was under his roof again, the control he prided himself on was slipping. He reached for his phone when a sharp buzz came through his earpiece. A security alert. Voice through the comm: "Sir, intruders on the east perimeter. Armed." Leon's calm shattered instantly. "How many?" "For confirmed. Possibly more." Leon's eyes darkened. He didn't need to ask who they were. Rival gangs had been moving closer for weeks, testing the Vetra borders. But this time they'd come too close. And Evan was in the East Hall. In mansion hallway, night. Evan heard the first gunshot before he even understood what it was. The sound sliced through the quiet like lightning. He froze, papers falling from his hands. Then came shouting, men's voices harsh and unfamiliar. His breath caught. Footsteps thundered down the hall. Before he could move, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Evan stumbled backward, searching for something, anything to hold on to. His heart raced, panic rising in his throat. "Who's there?" he whispered, voice trembling. A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor. Then another. He backed away, pressing himself against the wall, until a hand grabbed him from behind. He gasped, and before he could scream, another hand covered his mouth. "Quiet!" a low voice commanded. That voice, that scent. Leon. Evan's body went still, his heart pounding against Leon's chest. Leon's arm wrapped around him protectively as his other hand drew a gun. His breathing was steady, too steady, but Evan could feel the tension in every muscle. "Stay behind me," Leon whispered. The sound of boots echoed closer. Shadows moved toward them. Evan tried to speak, but Leon gave a single shake of his head. Silence. And then chaos. 3 men burst from the corner, weapons raised. Leon moved like a storm, precise, brutal, unstoppable. Gunfire flashed, deafening in the narrow hall. Evan ducked behind a pillar, covering his ears, heart hammering as the world exploded around him. When the sound finally faded, the hall was filled with smoke and silence. Leon stood at the center, chest heaving, shirt torn, blood streaking his arm. The intruders were on the ground. Evan ran to him without thinking. "Leon, you're hurt." Leon grabbed his wrist, pulling him close, eyes burning gold in the emergency lights. "Are you okay?" he demanded, voice raw. Evan nodded weakly. I think so. Leon's hand stayed on his arm. Too long. Too tight. The room suddenly felt too small, too alive. Evan's pulse raced, his breath uneven. Something inside him cracked open. The same pull, the same fire, the same instinct he had tried to bury. Leon felt it too. He could see it in the way his pupils dilated, the way his hand trembled before he released him. "Don't look at me like that," Leon said quietly, though his voice was already trembling. "Like what?" Evan whispered. "Like you feel it too." The space between them burned. Evan tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He could feel it, the bond awakening, the mark on his neck heating like a living flame. Leon took a slow step forward. His hand rose, fingers brushing the scar again, and the moment he touched it, the air seemed to ignite. Evan gasped, knees weak. A wave of heat surged through both of them, instinct clawing its way to the surface. Leon's voice dropped to a whisper. "I told myself I wouldn't. I told myself you deserved freedom." He leaned closer, his breath warm against Evan's ear. "But the bond doesn't care about promises." Evan's eyes filled with tears, confusion, fear, longing, all tangled together. "I don't understand this," he whispered. "Why does it feel like I've known you forever?" Leon's jaw clenched. "Because you were never meant to forget." For a long, breathless moment, neither of them moved. The world outside could have burned again, and they wouldn't have noticed. Leon finally stepped back, breaking the spell before it consumed them both. His voice was low, controlled, barely. "You're safe now," he said, turning away. "That's all that matters." But as he walked down the hall, Evan pressed his hand to his neck, to the mark that now pulsed like a heartbeat beneath his skin. It was alive, and no matter how far Leon tried to run from it, no matter how hard Evan tried to deny it, the bond had been reborn, fierce, forbidden, and undeniable. The sound of rain echoed through the marble halls of the Vetra mansion, soft and relentless, a whisper of storm pressing against the glass walls. The air inside was colder than usual, not from the weather, but from the tension that coiled through its corridors. Leon Vetra sat in his study, his broad shoulders tense beneath his black shirt. His hands, scarred from years of violence, rested on the desk littered with reports, accounts of gun shipments, betrayal, and the constant shadow of enemies. But his thoughts were elsewhere, upstairs, where Evan was. The Omega had fallen asleep while sketching, a soft pencil still clutched between his fingers, light spilling across his hair. Leon had watched him from the doorway for a long time before walking away, his chest aching with something he couldn't name. He had thought he buried that feeling years ago, the pull, the bond, the hunger to protect and to claim. But Evan's scent lingered in every corner now. It was driving him insane. A sharp knock at the door snapped him back. He didn't need to ask who it was. "Come in," Leon said, voice rough. Marco stepped in. His younger brother, sharp-eyed and cold, dressed in a tailored suit. Unlike Leon, whose strength was raw and visible, Marco's power came from his mind, the strategist of the Vetra bloodline. He shut the door behind him and said flatly, "You should have told me." Leon's jaw tightened. "Told you what?" Marco's lips curved in a bitter smile. "Don't play games with me, brother." The boy, the Omega. Evan. Leon's silence confirmed it. Marco took a slow step closer, studying him like a man inspecting a wound. "Do you know what people are saying? The men are whispering. Our rivals think you've gone soft. They think the Alpha who burned a city for power is now distracted by some fragile Omega." Leon's hand curled into a fist, veins tightening along his wrist. "Watch your words." But Marco didn't stop. "You know what happens when an Alpha claims an Omega, Leon? The bond changes you. It weakens your instincts, makes you reckless. You can't lead the Vetra Empire if your blood belongs to someone else." Leon's eyes darkened. "He's not just someone else." Marco let out a humorless laugh. "That's exactly the problem." He circled the room slowly, his tone dropping to a warning. "Our father built this empire on blood and dominance. No weakness, no attachments. You start marking an omega, and the council will come for you. They'll call it a betrayal of blood. You'll lose everything. Leon stood, the chair scraping back. I've already lost enough. For a moment silence filled the study, the kind that felt like a blade pressed to the throat. Marco studied his brother's face, searching for the man he once knew, the ruthless Alpha who never hesitated. But what he saw now was something different. A man torn between his heart and his bloodline. You saved him once, fine, Marco said quietly. But don't make him your undoing. Leon's voice was low. He isn't my undoing, Marco. He's the only thing keeping me human. The words hit the air like a confession. Marco exhaled, turning away. Then I hope humanity is worth the price you'll pay. Because once the council finds out, you won't just lose your throne. You'll lose your life. And his. He left without another word. The sound of the door closing echoing like a gunshot. Leon stood in the silence, his reflection caught in the rain-streaked glass. A king standing on the edge of ruin. He knew Marco was right. The Vetra family didn't forgive love. They saw it as treason. But when he looked toward the staircase, where Evan's scent still lingered faintly, Leon made his choice in the quiet of his heart. If love was treason, then he would burn the empire for it. Evan walked through the corridors of the Vetra mansion like a ghost, his footsteps soft against the polished marble. Each echo reminded him of the past he had tried to bury, of fire, betrayal, and the golden eyes that had haunted his nightmares for years. He loved the mansion in theory, the sweeping staircases, the high ceilings, the warmth of wealth and power. But in reality, it felt like a gilded cage. Every wall, every locked door, reminded him that he wasn't free. And yet he couldn't leave. Leon's presence was everywhere, even when the Alpha wasn't in the room. It clung to him in the faint scent of leather, the shadow that lingered in corners, the unspoken awareness that someone was always watching, always guarding. Evan tried to focus on his work, the sketches, the furniture designs, the colors and textures he had carefully chosen. But every line he drew was shaky, distracted by memories he had thought long gone. He had trusted someone once. He had loved someone once. And he had paid the price. He could feel the walls closing in. His pulse raced. Every glance, every accidental brush of Leon's hand, every look that lingered too long sent heat coiling through him. And yet, beneath the attraction, beneath the pull of the bond he barely understood, there was fear. Fear that history would repeat itself. Fear that Leon was hiding the truth about that night. The fire, the men who had tried to sell him, the mark that was left incomplete. Evan paused at the window, looking out at the city lights shimmering beneath the rain. He pressed a hand to his neck, fingers brushing over the faint scar. What happened that night? He wondered. Why did he save me? And why did he never explain? The unanswered questions clawed at him like tiny knives. The bond that had awakened in Chapter 6 pulsed beneath his skin, relentless and confusing. It was a constant reminder that something between them was stronger than fear, stronger than logic. Evan sighed, shoulders tensing. He hated how much he wanted Leon. Hated the way his body betrayed him with every look, every word. And he hated even more the helplessness, the inability to understand the Alpha's mind, the secrets he still carried. He wasn't sure which caged him more, the mansion or the pull of the bond. Later, he found himself in the library, sketchbook abandoned. The fire crackled softly, the golden flames reflecting in his eyes. Leon's silhouette appeared in the doorway, calm but commanding. "You're thinking too much," Leon said, his voice low, almost gentle. Evan stiffened. I can't help it. Everything feels, I don't know, trapped." Leon stepped closer, eyes never leaving him. "It's not the mansion that traps you." Evan's breath hitched. "Then what is it?" Leon's gaze softened, and for a moment, Evan thought he saw the man beneath the Alpha, the man who had carried him through fire, the man who had saved him more than once. "It's the past," Leon said quietly. "And your fear of it." Evan swallowed hard, trembling. "You're hiding something. About that night. You're hiding what really happened." Leon's jaw tightened. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Evan's forehead. A small, intimate gesture that sent heat spiraling through the Omega's chest. "I'm not hiding to hurt you," Leon said finally, voice low and steady. "I did it to protect you." Evan pulled back slightly, still wary. "Protect me? From what?" "From yourself." Leon's golden eyes softened, almost painfully. "From the people who wanted to use you. From the truth of what could have destroyed you. And maybe from me." Evan froze, heart hammering. The last words hung between them like a whisper of fire. He wanted to ask, "What do you mean?" He wanted to shout, "Tell me the truth." But all he could do was stare at the Alpha, trapped between fear, desire, and the slowly awakening bond that neither of them could control. Leon stepped closer again, the heat of his body unmistakable. "You're not free yet," he said, almost a whisper. "But soon you'll understand. And then the choice will be yours." Evan felt his chest tighten. The cage he had been living in, half physical, half emotional, felt heavier than ever. And yet, in that moment, he knew one undeniable truth. The bond was real, and it was pulling them together whether he wanted it to or not. No matter how much he feared his past, no matter how caged he felt, the Alpha was always there, watching, waiting, protecting. And Evan realized, with a mixture of dread and longing, that he would never be able to resist that pull. The storm hit the city like a living thing. Rain pounded against the windows of the Vetra mansion, lightning flashing across the sky, illuminating the grand halls in jagged bursts of silver. Thunder shook the walls, echoing through the rooms like a warning, or perhaps a reckoning. Evan stood on the balcony, drenched, rain soaking through his clothes. His hair clung to his face, eyes wide and restless. He had followed the sound of Leon's footsteps, the low, commanding presence that had haunted him since he arrived at the mansion. "I need to know," Evan shouted over the storm, voice trembling. "I need the truth, Leon." Leon stepped out behind him, calm despite the deluge, coat clinging to his broad shoulders. Lightning lit his face, sharp and dangerous, and Evan could see the tension beneath his controlled mask. "You want the truth?" Leon's voice was low, carrying over the roar of the storm. "You're ready for it?" Evan swallowed hard, chest tight. "I've waited years. I'm ready." Leon's eyes darkened, gold gleaming faintly in the flashes of lightning. He took a step closer, rain dripping from his hair and jawline. "That night," he began, voice barely above a growl, "the men who tried to sell you, they didn't survive." Evan froze, his breath caught. What do you mean?" "I killed them," Leon said bluntly, teeth clenched. "Every last one. I made sure you'd never have to face them again." The words hit Evan like a physical blow. He stepped back instinctively, rain plastering his shirt to his skin, heart hammering. You killed people for me?" Leon didn't flinch. "They were monsters. You were a child, an Omega who had already lost everything. Couldn't let them touch you. And I wouldn't." Evan's hands shook. "All these years, you've been protecting me from the shadows?" Leon's jaw tightened. "Yes, I couldn't be there openly. Too many eyes, too many threats. But I watched. I interfered. I made sure nothing reached you that could harm you again." Tears blurred Evan's vision. Anger, fear, and something darker, something dangerously close to relief, mixed in his chest. "And you never told me?" "I couldn't," Leon said, voice low, almost vulnerable. "You would have hated me, or worse, feared me. I didn't want you to live in fear of me as well as them." The wind whipped around them, rain lashing against the balcony railing. Evan reached out instinctively, trembling. "All these years, I thought I was alone." Leon's hand found his, steadying him against the storm. The contact was electrifying, sending heat coiling through Evan despite the cold. "You were never alone, Evan. Never." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the scar on Evan's neck, the mark Leon had once begun, the bond neither of them could deny. Leon's gaze dropped to it, eyes darkening, raw and filled with desire, guilt, and something fierce that Evan had only felt in fleeting moments before. "You're mine," Leon whispered, almost a confession. "Not because I claimed you in some moment of weakness, but because you were always meant to be." Evan's heart thudded painfully. He wanted to run, to pull back, but the pull of the bond, the invisible chain connecting them, held him fast. Fear and longing wrestled within him. "Leon, he began, voice shaking. "You don't have to say it." Leon cut in softly, bringing his forehead to Evan's, rain dripping between them. "The bond speaks louder than words." The storm around them raged, but here, in the quiet fury of their bond, the world narrowed to two people. Two hearts, two fates intertwined, and a truth neither could ignore. Evan wrapped his arms around Leon instinctively, clinging to the only anchor he had ever known. Leon held him tightly, a low growl vibrating in his chest, a sound of possession, protection, and something more primal. For the first time in years, Evan felt safe. Not because of walls or locks or wealth, but because of the man who had saved him once from fire and had been silently saving him ever since. And in the roar of the storm, with rain cascading around them like a curtain, their bond, fierce, forbidden, undeniable, finally came alive. The night fell like a blade over the city, sharp and cold. Rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the pale glow of streetlights. But in the shadows, the predators were moving. Leon's empire was under attack. Rivals he had thought subdued were bold enough now to strike at the heart, at him. And they had discovered his greatest weakness. Evan. He had sensed the shift hours earlier. Security reports, coded threats, whispers of movements in the city. Every instinct in his body screamed that this was no ordinary attack. And he had been right. In East Warehouse night, Evan struggled against the ropes binding him, bruises forming across his wrists and arms. The room was dim, lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The stench of oil and dust filled his nose. His heart pounded, terror mixing with the helplessness that had haunted him since childhood. "Calm down, Omega," a masked man sneered, pacing in front of him. "Your Alpha will pay for this. Don't worry, we're gonna make him watch." Evan's chest tightened. He had survived betrayal once before, but the memories threatened to suffocate him. The bond pulsed faintly along his neck, warm, insistent, reminding him of Leon. He closed his eyes, drawing in a shaky breath. "Hold on. He'll come." XT. City streets, night. Leon's car sped through the empty streets like a predator unleashed. Rain-slicked roads reflected the flashing lights of his convoy. His jaw was set, eyes sharp. Every muscle in his body was coiled for violence. His phone buzzed. A message from his lieutenant. "They have him. East Warehouse. Armed. Dangerous. Hurry." Leon's fingers clenched around the wheel, white-knuckled. "You don't take what's mine," he muttered, voice low, deadly. "Not him. Not ever." In East Warehouse night, the intruders laughed as they prepared to drag Evan toward the exit. He stumbled, panic rising. Then the doors exploded inward. Leon stepped through the smoke, black coat flaring behind him. His presence was a hurricane of fury. "Let him go," Leon commanded, voice low, a growl hidden beneath the words. The men froze, faces pale as gold eyes met theirs. Eyes that had killed more than they could imagine. Evan's heart surged at the sight. Relief and terror collided. "Leon!" he cried, struggling against the ropes. Without hesitation, Leon moved, a blur of lethal precision. In seconds, the intruders were disarmed, groaning or unconscious on the floor. His movements were cold, exact, and merciless. One man dared to reach for a weapon. Leon didn't hesitate. The gun was already in his hand. A single shot echoed. The man crumpled. Evan's chest heaved as Leon cut the ropes from his wrists. He fell into Leon's arms instinctively. "Shoo!" Leon murmured, pressing him against his chest. "It's over. I've got you." Evan's mind was spinning. He had feared death, betrayal, abandonment. But in this moment, in Leon's arms, he realized something undeniable. The Alpha would never let him go. XT. Warehouse rooftop night. Leon carried Evan to the car. Rain began again, dripping from the rooftops. Evan looked up at him, voice trembling. Why risk everything for me? Leon's eyes softened, but his grip never loosened. Because you're mine, he said, tone fierce. Always have been, and I don't care about the throne, the empire, or anything else. If you're in danger, nothing else matters. Evan's heart swelled with something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Safety. Love. The fierce, consuming bond that tied them together. Leon lowered his forehead to Evan's. The world can burn around us, he whispered. But you stay with me. Always. Evan clung to him, letting himself feel the weight of those words, the heat of the bond, and the promise that no one could ever take him away again. And for the first time since the fire years ago, he believed it. The night air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning wood. Flames licked the edges of the safe house like hungry serpents, painting the darkness in shades of orange and red. Leon stood at the edge of the wreckage, coat flaring around his broad shoulders, eyes locked on the windows where shadows moved. The people inside had taken Evan once, tried to weaken him, hurt him, manipulate him. Leon would make sure they never had the chance again. The bond pulsed at his neck and along his chest. A living, demanding force. It screamed at him, protect him, claim him, do not let go. No one had ever taken Evan from him and lived. In safe house night, Evan struggled against the ropes, coughing as smoke filled the room. His eyes stung, lungs burned, and the fire crept closer, consuming everything in its path. Panic clawed at him like sharp talons. Leon, he whispered hoarsely, voice cracking, please come. A shadow moved at the window, tall, unmistakable. Gold eyes glinted in the firelight, and the world seemed to still. Then the door crashed open. Leon. Evan's heart leapt. Leon, he cried. Leon moved like a predator, silent and lethal. Every movement precise, every action calculated. Within moments, the intruders were disarmed, incapacitated, or running for their lives. He ignored the flames licking at the walls, the smoke stinging his eyes. Nothing mattered except Evan. In safe house, main room night, one of the men lunged at Evan with a knife, desperation in his eyes. Leon reacted instantly, grabbing the man by the throat and slamming him into the wall. The man crumpled to the ground unconscious. Stay behind me, Leon growled, his voice low, vibrating with controlled fury. Evan stumbled toward him, coughing, tears streaking his face. I can't. Yes, you can, Leon interrupted sharply. Hold on to me, now. Evan obeyed instinctively, letting himself be pressed against Leon's chest. The bond flared violently at that contact. Warm, insistent, demanding. Heartbeats synced, breaths mingled. They were two halves of the same fire, uncontainable, unstoppable. Leon turned to face the remaining threat. One man tried to escape through the window. A single motion, fast, precise, and deadly, and he was down, unconscious before he could scream. No one touches my Omega, Leon whispered under his breath, almost to himself. XT. Safe house, night. The flames roared higher, devouring the structure, but Leon didn't hesitate. He grabbed Evan, carrying him out like he had years ago. Fire, smoke, and chaos threatening to consume them both. Evan clung to him, body pressed against his chest, heart hammering against Leon's. Leon, why do you keep risking yourself for me? Leon's jaw tightened as he tightened his hold on him. Because you're mine. Always have been. Always will be. And I will never let anyone take you from me. Ever again. The fire crackled, smoke curling around them like a living thing, but Evan felt safe. Not because the flames weren't dangerous, but because Leon was there, unyielding, unrelenting, and completely devoted. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating their figures against the burning house. A silhouette of protection, desire, and possession. Evan pressed his forehead to Leon's chest, breath catching. I trust you. Leon's hand rose, brushing wet hair from his face. His golden eyes softened, the firelight reflecting in them like molten gold. You don't have to just trust me, he murmured. You have me, always. And in that moment, the world narrowed to two people. Two souls bound by fate, fire, and the indestructible bond of Alpha and Omega. No fire, no enemy, no empire could ever take that away. The night was quiet, almost unreal after the chaos of the fire. The city lay beneath them like a sea of lights, distant and indifferent. But here, on the rooftop of the Vetra mansion, the world felt suspended. Evan sat on the edge, legs dangling, fingers brushing the cool metal railing. His heart was still racing, adrenaline lingering from Leon's rescue, from the fire, from the near certainty that he had almost been taken again. Leon approached quietly, the sound of his steps a familiar rhythm that made Evan's chest tighten. He was drenched, coat still clinging, golden eyes glinting in the pale moonlight. You shouldn't be here, Evan whispered, voice rough, hesitant. Leon's lips curved, faint but knowing. Neither should you, he murmured. But here we are. For a moment, they stood in silence, the wind tugging at their clothes and hair, the distant city humming below. Then Leon's hand lifted, brushing a stray strand of hair from Evan's face. Soft, gentle, yet electrifying. Evan's breath caught. He swallowed, eyes flicking to the faint scar on his neck. The unfinished mark Leon had once attempted all those years ago. A mark that had pulsed, demanding, never fading, calling them together again and again. Evan began, voice trembling. I don't understand. This bond. It scares me sometimes. It's overwhelming. Leon's hand slid down to rest lightly against the side of his neck, just beneath the mark. His touch sent a shiver through Evan's body. The bond isn't about fear, Leon said, low and steady. It isn't about control. It's not about owning you, forcing you, or taking from you. It's about protection, about devotion, about never letting anyone harm you, ever again. Evan's chest tightened. Even after everything, you still protect me? Leon's golden eyes softened, a warmth that only Evan ever saw piercing through the Alpha's usual storm of control and danger. Always, you are mine, Evan. Not because I can claim you, but because I will guard you, cherish you, and stand by you, no matter what. Evan's pulse raced, the bond pulsing against his skin like a heartbeat of its own. He pressed a hand to the scar, feeling the warmth there, the pull that demanded completion. His voice was barely a whisper. Then, I choose to stay. Leon's expression shifted, darkening with desire and tenderness. Are you sure? He asked, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the scar. Evan nodded, courage and trust mingling in his gaze. I'm sure. I trust you. With that, Leon leaned closer, forehead to forehead, golden eyes locking with Evan's. His hands moved with careful reverence, tracing the curve of Evan's neck, feeling the pulse of the bond beneath his fingertips. And then he began. The mark, once unfinished, once a symbol of incomplete connection, became a living bond. A ribbon of fire and warmth, of devotion and promise, etched itself into Evan's skin. Pain mingled with pleasure, fear with longing, until every nerve in Evan's body hummed with the intensity of the bond. Leon's voice was a low murmur against his ear. You are mine, and I am yours. Always. Evan's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of understanding, of release, of surrender to a love so fierce and protective that it demanded nothing but trust. I am yours, he whispered back. The wind whipped around them, the city below distant and small, but here, on this rooftop, with fire and protection and love flowing between them, nothing else existed. Nothing else mattered. The bond pulsed and shimmered, golden and alive, uniting them completely. And for the first time in years, both Alpha and Omega felt whole. The Vetra mansion, once a symbol of power and control, felt suddenly fragile, like a palace of glass perched atop a storm. Leon had thought he had prepared for everything. Rivals, attacks, betrayal from the streets, yes. But betrayal from blood? That was a danger he had never truly anticipated. Marco. Leon had sensed a shadow lingering, a calculation behind every polite smile, every seemingly casual comment. But he had not seen the extent of it, not until the message came. In council chamber, night, the Mafia Council gathered in their darkened hall, opulent and foreboding, the air thick with smoke and tension. Whispers died to silence as Marco stepped forward, flanked by men loyal to him, and to the secret he was about to expose. "Brothers," Marco began, voice sharp and controlled, "we have tolerated weakness in our family for too long. It ends tonight." He paused, letting the words settle like venom. Then, with deliberate cruelty, he revealed the truth. Leon Vetra has an Omega. An Alpha has claimed him, not for alliance, not for strategy, but for desire. For love. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some faces twisted in disbelief, others in fury. A few masked grim understanding, the kind born of men who knew the cost of sentiment. Leon's jaw tightened. The world seemed to slow, every breath dragging like lead. Evan stood behind him, trembling but resolute. Their bond pulsed between them, golden and unbroken. But it couldn't shield them from the council's judgment. Marco's lips curved into a cruel smile. Do we let this weakness destroy us? Or do we act to preserve our empire? In Vetra Mansion, Leon's study, night. Leon returned to the mansion, fury burning in every movement. The betrayal cut deep, not because Marco had spoken, but because he had dared to weaponize love against them. He strode through the halls, heart pounding, mind racing. The empire he had built, the power he had wielded, was under threat, not from outsiders but from blood. Evan approached cautiously. "Leon, what now?" Leon's eyes, golden and molten, met his. "Now we fight. Marco wants the council to destroy us, to destroy you, and I won't let that happen." Evan swallowed, fear and determination mingling in his gaze. "I'm with you." Leon's hand brushed the scar on Evan's neck, their bond glowing faintly in the dark. "You will always be with me," he said. "No one will take you. Not Marco. Not the council. Not anyone. XT. Vetra Mansion, night. The streets erupted into chaos. Gunfire echoed, rival factions clashing in the darkness, and the Vetra family's loyal men rallied behind Leon. Marco led a strike team, confident, ruthless, believing he could topple his brother. But Leon was a storm incarnate, controlled, precise, and lethal. Every move was calculated. Every strike eliminated a threat before it could act. Evan stayed close, feeling the surge of adrenaline, the pull of the bond, and the fire of determination in Leon. This was not a battle of love, it was a battle for survival. And for the first time, Evan realized the depth of the Alpha's devotion. Leon moved through the chaos, golden eyes blazing, hands and weapons a whirlwind of power. His focus was singular: protect Evan. Destroy Marco. Preserve everything they had built together. In council chamber, night, the council watched from shadows, some whispering fear, others awe. Marco had underestimated the bond, the fire between Alpha and Omega. It was more than desire, it was a force that no threat could sever. Leon confronted Marco finally, standing over him amidst the ruin of their family's war. "You chose betrayal," Leon said, voice low, dangerous. "But I choose him, Evan. You wanted to destroy me. You failed." Marco's eyes narrowed, fury and disbelief warring in them. "You'll regret this," he spat. Leon's hand found Evan's, fingers intertwining, the mark glowing faintly with their bond. "No," Leon said softly, almost a whisper meant only for Evan. "We survive. We rise. Together." The council murmured. Some dared not interfere. The balance of power had shifted, bloodline or bond. It was clear which one was stronger. And for Leon and Evan, the bond was no longer a secret. It was a weapon, a shield. And the world would learn that love, Alpha devotion, Omega surrender, could burn brighter than any empire. The sky burned crimson. the blood moon casting an eerie glow over the city. Its light spilled across rooftops and streets, painting the world in shades of fire and fate. Leon stood atop the Vetra mansion, golden eyes narrowed, muscles coiled and ready. Beside him, Evan's hand tightened in his, the bond between them pulsing like a living heartbeat. Tonight would decide everything, the past, the Empire, and their future. The streets below erupted in chaos. Rival factions, loyal to Marco and embittered by years of betrayal, converged with a single goal: destroy Leon, claim the Omega, and seize the Empire. But they had underestimated the Alpha and the bond. XT. City streets, night. Gunfire shattered the silence. Sparks flew as bullets struck metal, shouts echoing in the crimson glow. Leon moved like a shadow of death, every motion calculated, every strike precise. Rivals fell before him, unconscious or worse, while his golden eyes never left Evan. Evan followed closely, heart hammering, adrenaline surging. He wasn't helpless. He had learned to fight, to defend, to survive. But he was also acutely aware that their survival depended on Leon. Through the chaos, the bond flared brightly, guiding them, shielding them, pulling them forward as one unstoppable force. In rival stronghold, night, Marco waited, a cruel smile twisting his face as he aimed his gun at Evan. "I told you, Leon," he hissed. "You can't protect him forever. Not from me." Leon stepped forward, rage and love blazing in equal measure. "I don't just protect him. I own him, and I will burn the world before I let you touch him." In a blur of motion, Leon disarmed Marco, moving with lethal precision. The fight was vicious, every strike fueled by years of betrayal, fire, and the need to claim what was his. Evan's eyes met Leon's as the Alpha pinned Marco, golden gaze filled with raw power. "This ends now," Leon growled. "You will never hurt him again." Marco faltered, realizing too late that the bond between Alpha and Omega was stronger than any empire, stronger than vengeance. XT. Rooftop, night. The battle over, the city quiet but scarred. Leon and Evan stood together under the blood moon. Rain began to fall gently, washing away smoke, ash, and the remnants of war. Evan leaned against Leon, heart still racing. "It's over," he whispered. Leon pressed a hand to the back of his neck, brushing wet hair from his face, golden eyes softening. "No. It's just the beginning," he murmured. The bond between them pulsed, warm and steady, sealing every fear, every scar, every moment of pain into a promise. The past, with all its fire, betrayal, and blood, had finally been defeated. They would leave the world behind, the Mafia, the Empire, the dangers that had haunted them for years. No one would find them. No one would ever break them. Evan tilted his head, meeting Leon's gaze. "And us?" Leon smiled faintly, the first truly relaxed smile in years. "Us," he said softly. "Forever." The blood moon reflected in their eyes, twin flames of devotion, desire, and indestructible love. Together, they stepped into the night, disappearing into shadows and freedom, leaving behind the life of violence and fear that had tried to claim them. And in that quiet, powerful moment, love, true, Alpha devotion, and Omega surrender won. The world would not find them, but they had found each other, and that was all that mattered.